Well, hello. Welcome to our live stream. It's always fun to be connected with people across the country. My name is Gabrielle Resch McNally. I'm the Women for the Land Director here at American Farmland Trust. I'm physically based here in Oregon on the West Coast on the lands of the Coast Salish peoples. The Women for the Land program is dedicated to working on behalf of greater equity in agriculture. We focus on supporting women farmers, landowners, and aspiring farmers and accessing resources to support their resilience. So thank you for joining our free range conversation. This is a live conversation and you will have a chance to engage and ask questions via social media. While we're getting started, please use the comment or chat field on whatever platform you're using and tell us where you're streaming in from and how you're connected to agriculture. Today, I'm honored and privileged to be talking to three amazing women leaders in regenerative agriculture. I want to thank our whole team here at AFT and our project partners for their support in getting us to this stage. I really want to emphasize that my role here today is a facilitator of dialogue, and I'm excited to be joined here by incredible agrarian leaders. So just to provide a little background for our guests who will share more about themselves in a minute. I'm joined here by Sarah Morton of Cattle Run Farm in Virginia. She's also a Women for the Land Transformative Grant awardee, and she wears lots of hats, but another big role she plays is on the board of directors of the Minority and Veteran Farmers of the Piedmont. So thank you, Sarah, for being here. I'm also joined by LeTicia Marshall of Bearfruit and Grow in Kentucky. She's also a Brighter Future Fund grant awardee from AFT, or American Farmland Trust. She's a collaborator with us at Women for the Land and also wears many hats and has done many things and is a founding organizer and member of the Kentucky Black Farmers Association. And last but certainly not least is Rowan Miller of Rowantree Farm, based in Pennsylvania, and has been a Women for the Land and American Farmland Trust collaborator. An interesting fact about Rowan, also worked as a home health nurse and licensed massage therapist and trained in functional medicine. So she brings that sort of perspective also to her work on her farm. I'm going to ask these wonderful guests to introduce themselves more properly, as I've only clearly scratched the surface. This live stream was inspired by Women's History Month and a recent Gender Equity in Agriculture report that we released here at AFT. It shows that agriculture, unfortunately, is still one of the most unequal professions when it comes to income inequality, followed by other challenges for women and non-binary producers, which they face on their land every day. But that said, agriculture and the agrarian dream is also a place of nourishment, of healing, of connection and community for many farmers, women farmers as well. And so we really want to thank you for joining this discussion today. So just a reminder really quickly, this is a live stream conversation. Don't forget to post questions that you have and share a little bit about yourself on social media. So I'm going to start off with my first question for our guests. I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your agrarian journey. What milestones have you met in your journey that really highlight your passion for this work? So I'm going to pass it to Sarah first and then ask LeTicia and then Rowan to jump in here. So Sarah, kick us off. Sarah, you're on mute. Oh. Hey, Sarah, you're on mute. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. There she is.
Sorry.
There you go. Welcome. You got to start again.
So I'm a third generation beef cattle farmer in Virginia with my family. I started with 4-H at the age of 5 years old when my father first introduced me to my first Yorkshire gilt. And from that, I fell in love with that whole space of agriculture. And went on to major in animal science and ag ed at Virginia State University, and then went on to Virginia Tech and pursued additional degrees there. But always had a love for the land. I enjoyed being outside and dealing with the dirt and flowers. My grandmother was a big herbologist and into flowers. And so it just kind of matriculated over into my space. And then as I grew it, I used to always aspire to be the Secretary of Ag for the United States. That was one of my goals. But, you know, that has since changed because I just love being and helping other people to really understand the connection of land, soil, and our health. As many women, we go through a lot of changes as women in general. And I just think that one sector strategy out here is the agrarian life, that you can pursue many careers and still be grounded in what you truly love. And it does allow for women to be flexible and adaptable in this space when you're in the agrarian world. As a brown girl in a white man's world, it can be challenging. I used to work for the United States Department of Agriculture out in the Midwest as a meat grader. And I also worked for Ciba-Geigy, now known as Novartis and DuPont. So I was always in that world of, who is this girl working out here? And, it's not been easy, but, as I tell people, I just kind of forge along and allow my work to speak for itself. And then it just becomes more telling and compelling for people to say, wow, we cannot judge the book by the cover, but rather let's open it up and read it to see what's offered out here. I am a fellow of the the Valor Program of Virginia, which is Virginia Agriculture Leaders Obtaining Results. So, that is really leaders out here in the agrarian world really making an impact. So I'm really heavily involved in food resiliency, specifically trying to help sustain our small farms here in Virginia. We're into the food resiliency of sourcing fresh, locally sourced specific protein, pork, beef, poultry, and eggs for food pantries and food closets, so we can mitigate the food inequities that we see in our food pantries, and also debunk the myth that food pantries are for the low socioeconomic community. So we're in that space, but also using the farm. My brothers are disabled vets, so using that into the whole helping him with his PTSD and other issues that he may have as being a veteran. And so using it for horticultural therapeutic programs and really to help students, young urban students, to really become grounded in understanding where their food comes from. So, and then as a Minority Veteran Farmers Board Director and founding member, one of the founding members, it's really important to pull everybody together. And when we talk about minority, we don't necessarily mean race. It's all about anybody that aligns with that minority definition: women, LGBTQ, veterans, whomever it is. Everybody has a space in the agrarian world. And so one thing I learned is that the land doesn't judge, the dirt doesn't judge, right? So we're in a space where we all have to be divergent thinkers. And we're just like the many different trees and the flowers that grow. We all are beautiful and we look different, and we all have something to contribute to society. And so this is a space where we really do open the door for anybody to become a part of our community. So I'm just delighted to be a part of this. And as we continue to champion this body of work, I think hopefully the agrarian world will set the precedent for others to come along and understand what it means to create a community of practice and a community of unity and synergy.
Thank you, Sarah. Great way to kick things off. LeTicia, share a little bit more about yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for the invite, AFT. I appreciate Nicole, who couldn't be here today, but Nicole is an incredible ambassador of women for the land, and I'm so grateful to have gotten to know her. But thank you all so much for the invite. And yeah, so I am LeTicia Marshall, the owner operator of Bearfruit and Grow. It's just me. So with lots and lots of help from my community, I really couldn't have survived, I don't think, the last 3-4 years without volunteers and people just that gave me a shot, right, to prove to them that I deserve to be in this space as a woman, and further supported the cause. And the cause for me is anything aligned with connecting to the soil, acknowledging and honoring our ancestors and our creator, and fighting for what's right. And sometimes being silent in that fight is part of the fight. And so I'm very grateful to be able to share more today about what we do, and hear from all the other speakers. This is really cool to get so many states in the same room. This is dope. So We started the farm 4 years ago, officially. But before that, I grew up on my grandparent and great grandparents' farm in Metcalfe County, Kentucky. And the farm is still there, being stewarded by my mom. My grandmother passed away 2 Octobers ago and left the land to her 4 siblings. But my mom is the one that's on the land and stewarding it. So I'm very grateful that she just chose to do that. And the rest of her siblings, decided to go for it instead of, selling it, which is the easy way out, I think. But growing up on the farm, we did chores like taking the slop buckets to the pigs, and every once in a while getting running from the cows. And my grandparents also owned a small grocery store, and so they were the only Black-owned business in their area, and that was really cool to see. I mean, looking back, I didn't know as a kid what that really truly meant, right? But a Black-owned business that was fully supported by majority white community. All of them were farmers, right? And they paid and frequented my grandparents' grocery store on a regular basis for breakfast and lunch, right? And so my grandmother cooked meals, and they sold groceries, like the homemade, handmade wooden shelves that ran across the wall, with bread on it and chips, and with the wire hooks, I'm talking about, for the chips, and a couple of Coca-Cola coolers, and every once in a while you would hear someone ask for a what was it called? Head cheese sandwich. Y'all know what I'm talking about? I can't do it. I don't see how they did it, but yes, every once in a while you would hear that. And Granny would definitely, if they wanted a cold sandwich, she definitely had the big block of commercial bologna, right? And she would cut these slices of bologna this thick, y'all, and the cheese to match it, right? And she would spread some mayonnaise on it. For breakfast, the most memorable dish I can remember was the biscuit and gravy, right? And then she would put a dollop of grape jelly on top, and I still eat it like that to this day if I can get it on my plate. So, but I'm completely, in awe of looking back on their journey as farmers and stewards of the land, and everything that they accomplished with little to no resources. After they were big tobacco farmers, are not big tobacco farmers. We have 40 acres. Okay. But they farm tobacco. That was their main source of income, cattle, and they have a pay lake, and the pay lake is still in operation to this day. But a small farm that, created big impact in the community, because everybody would tell you that my grandmother was the boss, right? So she was the boss, and everybody knew it, right? And my grandfather worked really hard doing everything else, but everybody will tell you that they had a kind face, but when they meant business, they meant business. And I feel like I've acquired a little bit of that personality from them. And honestly, that's what's helped guide me and keep me in the fight for farmers across the state of Kentucky, specifically historically underserved farmers of color, and urban farmers. Urban farming is not new, but it's new to a lot of folks. The concept of urban farming, or farming in different ways, and it looking different than 100 acres and corn, right? And so in Kentucky, just trying to advocate for some of the policies to be changed, and then enforced, because I don't feel like it's inclusive of all farms. So we're working toward that. Bearfruit and Grow, we do farm produce. We raise chickens. You can probably hear them in the background. I apologize for the noise. We got little chickies in here. And we have a couple of niche farms. So I farm microgreens and composting worms as well. But with all of that, we're still able to pursue policy change, connected to the community so they can connect to whatever they feel like they are here for. Some arrive to a workshop and have no clue what they're doing here, right? But they need something. And I just feel like the land can offer you all kinds of different things. And you may not expect it, but it's what you needed all the time, at the right time. And so anyway, I'm grateful to continue to connect to AFT and hope that others in the world, you don't have to know a whole lot and you don't have to have a whole lot to get started. I just want to encourage you. But whatever you do, figure out why you're doing it, because that's the thing that's going to keep you. And I know you're going to talk about that a little bit later, but that's one of the things that'll keep you going. And I just really, I'm grateful for all the sacrifices that my ancestors made and learning about some of those so that I can continue to just try to thrive as a woman in ag and not survive the whole time I'm here. So thank you.
Thank you, LeTicia. Thank you for giving that praise for your ancestors. Definitely how we're all here today. So thank you. Rowan, please share a little bit more about yourself.
Hi. My name's Rowan Miller, and I own Rowantree Farm, and I'm it. My journey started when I was a child. I grew up on a very big sheep farm down in the Falkland Islands, 110,000 acre farm that my dad managed. And we raised mostly sheep. We had probably 32 to 36,000 sheep on average on any given year. So it was a lot of sheep. Anyway, growing up, I always knew that one day I would get back into farming or become a farmer myself. But it took a long time. And about 11 years ago, I bought a small 5.5 acre farm. And part of the reason was my youngest son was in 4-H, and he had a sheep that he was raising for 4-H, and we didn't have any land to keep it on. We had a house in the woods, but there was nowhere to keep a sheep. So anyhow, we bought this 5.5 acre farm, and that was my gateway drug into farming. So it took a couple of years. At the time, I was working as a home birth midwife, and I didn't have a lot of time to dedicate to the farm at that moment. And then, so it's probably about 5-6 years ago that I decided that I wanted to start growing things, because I'd finished functional medicine training. And what I wanted to do was grow the things that I felt like my home health patients or my functional medicine clients should be eating. Chemical-free food and animals that were raised in the best possible way to promote the best health for people. So that was how that started. So I started with, a couple more sheep, and then I got pigs and broiler chickens, laying hens, and I built a small high tunnel. And I should add, I couldn't have done any of this. While I say I do it by myself, I do all the farming part myself for the most part. I have a helper here and there, but if it wasn't for my stepdad, Richard, and my reluctant farmer husband, I wouldn't be able to do this. So they've been quite a financial support for me helping to get this going. So anyhow, after a few years, I ran out of room on 5.5 acres. We put up 3 high tunnels, and I was doing then probably 6 to 10 pigs a year, but that was about all that the land could sustain with my flock of Icelandic sheep. So I was actively searching for another farm, and long story short, I happened to this 104 acre farm, and it was much bigger than what I really thought I needed. But now I'm like, it's perfect. it was serendipitous that it came along when it did. So, so this is going into our third year here. I rented some of the land for a year before we bought the farm from the family. It was a family farm and had been in the family since the late 50s. So it was difficult for all of them to let it go. But anyway, so here we are. And now I have this responsibility for all of this acreage to make sure that it's stewarded properly. And even before we bought this farm, I was a huge advocate of regenerative farming and organic farming, and eating and raising only grass-fed, grass-finished animals, ruminant animals. So now I have all this space and trying to figure out, well, how do I use all this space easily? So I was actually awarded a grant this last fall, which is not completed yet, but to fence the entire farm for me. It's something like 18,000 linear feet of fencing, and we only had to pay 10% of it, which is certainly a chunk of change, but it has been a game changer for how I can manage livestock, rotational grazing, and all the other aspects of the farm. So in years past, I was using electronet fence for my sheep and 2-strand electric for the cows and the pigs. It was so much time was spent every few days moving everybody. And it was, you've got August and you have to mow where you're going to put your fence first. And it became a lot, because on our small farm, we still have our vegetable farm there. And that's where we grow everything for the CSA. I had a veggie CSA. Trying to have multiple streams of income, because what I have learned in farming is that you have to have multiple streams of income, because if something goes south, you have something else to fall back on. So the first 2 years that I was here, I did corn and soybeans, and it was really hard for me to do that. But I knew that I had to do something with the land and not just leave it, so that I could start taking back little bits of the farm each year. But it was hard for me to do that, because putting all those chemicals into the ground, and we did no-till, but still putting all those chemicals into the ground was definitely not what I wanted to be doing. So really that's about it. And so this will be our first summer being able to use the ground properly and rotationally graze properly without having to spend hours moving fences. So I'm really excited. And I'm part of PASA's benchmark study now. So as of last fall, so they will do soil testing for me. So the 3 specific areas that we selected in the farm to use for this benchmark study, I'm excited to see how the composition of the soil changes over the next few years, with rotating the different animals through and planting different species of forage for them. So anyway, so that's my journey.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you all. I really appreciate the diversity of your stories, and I can see some of the through lines of the persistence and commitment to the land, and appreciate each of you kind of bringing that. I just want to remind our audience that this is a live discussion. We've got a great audience tuning in from our various platforms. Folks have been making comments about where they're at. Great to see. We've got a lot of diversity out there. I just want to encourage people, if you have questions for our panelists, please ask them, and we will get to those. We'll have time to at least answer some of them. I see some of you answering questions for each other as well, which is great. So my next question for our panelists has to do with, I guess, barriers and ways you've overcome those barriers. So maybe I'll turn it back to Sarah. What are, along this sort of journey that you've been on, what are some of the barriers you've faced as a woman of color, kind of living your agrarian dream? And if you want to share a little bit about the ways that you've overcome those barriers, or at least worked towards overcoming them, since clearly all of you are so successful in the work you've done, but I know how much hard work you've put into it. So Sarah, I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, thanks, Gabrielle. So, in terms of barriers or challenges that we face, it's always, I said this previously, people judge a book by the cover, right? When you're in a room and you're asked to speak about something and people are thinking, why is this person speaking to us? What do they know? How can they connect? But then when you start sharing stories or talking about it, people just really have this look on their face like, oh, I'm taken back by how much this person knows or the depth and so I just think we live in a world of assumption, right? That everybody that looks the same, we all act the same, et cetera. And, we really don't take the opportunity to listen. We hear, but we don't listen. And even when I look at the land grant institutions, having gone to both, I've been to the HBCU and the PWIs, and the acceptance at each one of them are totally different, right? The standards, requirements, and expectations are totally different. And when you're working in this space, people automatically assume that when we are working in the agrarian space, we need to put you in areas that people can relate to you, right? So, I was an extension agent in Virginia in 4-H, and, I was placed in Richmond City, urban, where I created a program called Growing Science in Urban Communities to really promote to urban youth how to understand where the origin of their food comes from, right? Doesn't come from the grocery store. So really using agriculture to teach STEM to students, but also one of the initiatives was to combat poverty through skill development and teaching them about the textiles and the woodworking and food chemistry, et cetera. And so one of the barriers that I found was funding, right? To try to find funding to support initiatives like that. And I'm just going to be very transparent and blunt. I mean, we know that, if we look a certain way, we're going to get a lot more money than if we look a different way, right? And so that continues to be the barrier for women, LGBTQ, anybody that does not look like the norm. There's always going to be a struggle and a barrier. We're not going to get the same amount of funding that someone else is going to get. I mean, we see that on a regular basis. The historical precedent has been, when I walk into a bank, they want to know everything. They want all of my assets. They want me to leverage everything. Whereas a non-brown skinned person going into a bank, what do you need? How can I help you? Boom, come back tomorrow, and boom, their paperwork signed, but you got to give your life story. I mean, this is just the nature. This is where we are today in society. Even when you're looking to buy property in specific neighborhoods, so there are a lot of different barriers out here that we continue and hurdles that we still have to jump over here in 2024. And so when I think about this, we really need to understand what type of messing. Is it intentionality? We still have a high level of oppression out here, right? And there are oppressive gatekeepers in this agrarian world still. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but we still have some obstacles that we have to overcome. And if we're trying to be representatives of this space, we need to talk about how do you write a grant, who the eligibilities for grant. Do we need a grant to be 7 pages long, or can it be 2 pages, only 2 pages with robust and relevant information? When we think about direct marketing and sales, do we have to go through all of the unnecessary rhetoric and paperwork to procure product to a university, to procure products to a school system? Like there are still intentional barriers out there that doesn't swing the gate open for the entirety, right? So are we in this space for some? Are we in this space for all? And so we have to, going back to LeTicia's comment about policy, we have to really look at policies and how they affect the entirety. When we look at policies in the farming world and the agrarian world, a lot, if you're a big farmer, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 acre farm, you're going to get a lot more different privileges than us small farmers, right? 5 to 25, 25 to 500. So there's not equitable lenses across this ecosystem at all. We still have a lot of work to do in this space. When we are going to a feed store asking questions, or we're going to a agency asking about the programs that they're being offered, they're minimizing the information that's being shared to my cohort of individuals and counterparts and colleagues, to the other, so to my white counterparts or non-brown counterparts. So we still have the inequities out here. I don't care what people say. We're trying to mitigate them, but we're not mitigating them fast enough, right? We have to be solution focused in this space. We have to be results oriented in this space. And if a person has proven that they can grow and produce and develop diverse niches on their farm, then they should be able to go into a bank and show that effort and be able to get a loan or whatever they need to secure so they can continue their livelihood. When we think about opportunities for being on boards, one barrier that I see is I don't want to be on boards to serve a percentage. I want to be on a board because you want my knowledge and expertise, skills, and abilities. Do not put me on a board because you need to fill a quota. I'm not interested, right? And so we're still seeing pieces of that happening. If you're vocal, people don't want you. They don't want boat rockers in this space, right? They don't want transparency. I'm all about accountability. I'm all about transparency. I'm all about integrity. But through resilience and perseverance and persistence, this is how I overcome these barriers. I don't allow people to tell me no. I will give you a reason to tell me yes, because I will push you against the wall until I get the right answers we need. The days of riding on the back of the bus is over. If I'm not driving it, I'm giving you directions, because if we don't forge this for ourselves, nobody else is going to do it for us. There are some people in this space that is here because they really want to affect the change, but we also still have a bunch of intentional gatekeepers here, but they have a different spin on it, right? And so I'm very much in tune to what's happening out here. And this is why I give voice for those who don't want to give voice because of whatever retaliation or backlashes that they may face. I don't care. I work in the workforce space. I'm an executive director for workforce development for the state of Virginia for our Area 6. And one of the things I constantly push is say, how are we preparing training education for the next group of agrarians coming along? We don't have effective training programs to help service our industry properly. When we think about the viticulture industry, the wine industry is big into the tourism, but we don't have the proper training programs to pipeline students into that pathway. We don't have the proper training programs for the big high tunnels, the big greenhouse organizations and companies out here. We are not preparing folks to get into this industry in an equitable way. Does a training need to be 18 months? Can it be a micro training so we can get people exposed to the industry and then they can determine if this is something they want to do? So we really need to rethink what our educational and training systems look like so that we can ensure that the next generation is being prepared properly so we can pipeline them on into taking over some of these legacy properties that people have invested so much time in. So, I talked about it from different contexts, but I think we really have to look at it from the barriers for education, the barriers for the training, the barriers for the financial lending, and then the barriers for the accessibility. I don't have the same access as my other counterparts have. And so accessibility is huge. And specifically in the procurement world for direct marketing, we have to really think through processes and how do we help colleges and universities and K through 12 institutions and other healthcare institutions to really understand how they can direct source from local producers to help mitigate some of the health and mental illnesses that we have in our communities. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sarah. And you're getting a lot of go get them, Sarah, and well said on our sort of social media platforms. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you, folks, for adding questions here. We'll get to those shortly. LeTicia, if you want to jump in and share a little bit about some of the barriers you faced and the ways that you've overcome them.
Woo-wee, Miss Sarah. I wondered, like how in church they shout amen and say that, And well, I wanted to do all that after every comment that you said, man, because it's all true, right? And this isn't about pulling the race card. This is the way it is in this country, and so I would 120% back you on everything that you just said, Miss Sarah. I'm one of the biggest barriers, I think, in my journey at this point. Like I know I come from a bloodline that can. So that's not a barrier, right? Like there is living proof. My grandparents, my great grandparents, my ancestors before that I'm still learning about. They all made do with what they had, and they thrived with what they had, and it was very, very little. So I know that I can do that without a shadow of a doubt. There's no doubting that. And we just moved from a 0.22 acre farm to a 4.23 acre farm last October. So I haven't been here very long, but all that was here was a house, and it's 1,000 less square feet than where we came from. So it's a teeny tiny house, but we have 4 acres behind us, right? And land access, especially in urban areas, is one of the biggest barriers for farmers here, and one that I hear talked about all the time. And not that we can't sometimes even get access to the land, it's paying for it or having complete ownership of it. I don't know how many. I appeared on a short clip with shoot me, I'm blanking. I want to say NBC news station, and they ask about access to land, and it's not that, again, we can't access it, but it's getting ownership. And after that show, I've probably had 20 emails. I'm not lying. I'm not exaggerating. In my inbox, hey, I watched your clip. I have this amount of land. I have that amount of land nearby. Would you like to lease it? And part of me was like, oh, thank you so much. I'm very grateful that they actually reached out. But the other part, I'm just going to say it, okay? I wanted to slap them in the face. No, I don't want to lease your land. This is not, did you not hear what I said? This is about giving people access and the opportunity to own. And there are supposed to be, without like 3-year leases, or you can't even own it because you're a renter here. Like, I steward this. I pick up the trash on the street. There's no reason why I should not be able to purchase that lot across the street from me or next door to me that has been vacant for 10 years. Those are the type of things we're dealing with here. So I feel like the agencies that are supposed to be, the institutions that are supposed to be helping us access funds or helping us understand the process of applying for a grant, or specifically the Farm Service Agency. There are supposed to be programs out there for beginning farmers that have farmed less than 10 years. But I can't get all the information I need from you to be able to apply for those grants. And there was a guy, literally, and he still works there, and everybody knows who he is. And every time I talk about this story, they say, yeah, I'm sorry. That's all they say, right? But nobody's talking to him about his behavior, but he literally, I didn't know what a Schedule F was. I'm a new farmer, and that was one of the requirements. You need to show proof that you've produced. So how do you show that? Well, I have pictures. What do you mean, how do I show that? I have pictures. I've been to a farmer's market. People know that I produce and sell. What do you need? And he's like, well, you need a Schedule F. Well, the Schedule F wasn't mentioned on the website. Yeah, that's how it is sometimes, was his response. I said, okay, what else do I need to know? Well, I mean, there's probably other things, but you need a Schedule F. Well, what are the other things? Like, this is literally how the conversation went. So I had to hang up the phone because I was getting upset. I called a supporter who worked for the Kentucky Center for Rural and Ag Development here in Kentucky. And she told me, and she's like, no, don't take that. Call him back and say XYZ, right? And I asked her to get on the call with me. She did. She got on the call with me, but he treated her the same way, even though she worked, and this was a woman, right? Even though she worked for an organization that is well known in the ag community here. So I don't know what his problem was. He never seen my face, but I could not get the information that I needed. And that's the piece that bugs me. Give people what they need so that they can be informed and make informed decisions. And if you're not going to do that, that's okay. I'll find somebody else. Apparently, I couldn't talk to his boss because she was out of the office, and I couldn't talk to her boss because he wasn't in the office. So these are the things, that I've dealt with. Accessing land in urban areas is expensive, and really, this purchase was a we do it now or never kind of thing. Honestly. Now we didn't put ourselves in a position where we're going to regret it, and be house poor in 2 years. But that's kind of how you have to maneuver, right? You gather resources as much as you can, and you just go for it. The other part of this is collaboration and cooperation. I believe, again, till I die, I would tell people that Bearfruit and Grow only has one owner and operator, right? Only has one employee. But there's no way any of this happened without a team of people that had my back, right? I always work with a group of people to make things happen. So I might be the face, I might be the person that's talking a lot or representing or advocating, but I have my ancestors and 100 other people behind me that is helping me along the way. And I'm so grateful for that. But a lot of people don't have that. So, when you have lack of resources, number one, you don't have a support system, and then you're just ignorant, right? And you're trying to learn. It's enough to just make you quit sometimes, right? Of course, being a Black woman in America, we're always going to have to deal with this. This is what we deal with on a constant basis, inequities, people asking for, I feel like, unrealistic things. And I'm a beginning farmer. I might have some money in my bank account, but I can't give you all of that money, right? To borrow your tractor, for instance. Can we barter something? So I've been very grateful to be able to work with small farmers again. And I mean small, not 50 acres. I mean small as in a quarter acre, 2 acre farms. Okay. That's what I mean by small, less than 10 acres most of the time. But we've all been able to work together to help each other out. We've discovered in real time that our little bit creates a huge impact, right? Especially when we come together. And so Bearfruit and Grow is not just a farm, but one of the spokes in the wheel, other than policy, is aggregation of those small farm products. And so again, I'm the person in the front, but working on behalf of 14 other farms to aggregate and distribute product. So I feel like we get to tackle barriers like I'm not a big farm, and so I automatically have less access to resources. I have less access to market share, right? And so when we can combine our products, that increases our chances of being able to get into something that we maybe would not have pursued by ourselves. So cooperation, aggregation, definitely cooperation and community, definitely collaboration helps with combat some of those barriers. And if I've learned things, I'm always open to share. There's a lot of secrets in the ag world. A lot of acronyms, number one, that I don't even understand half of them. But I'm learning still. There's like 20 pages of acronyms in this industry. But as I'm understanding, I'm trying to teach somebody else what I know so that they can have this, some type of access or better, or be able to scale up their business, or just start with the basics. What is a farm number, right? A lot of people have been growing food for a long time and selling it at the farmer's market, but don't know how to access grants. And once they do get a hold of some, they have to have a farm number, and they don't know what that is. So they just quit, right? So we're helping people get farm numbers. We're helping people get certified with food safety certifications, GAP certifications, we just want to make sure that they're set up right to be able to, when the opportunity comes, maybe they can distribute their products to larger distribution centers, hubs, and all that kind of thing. So I'm very, very grateful. One of my favorite, and I'm gonna close with this. One of my favorite activists is Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer was an activist, a civil rights activist, right? She just wanted to vote, but that turned into her getting beat in jail, to where she ended up in the hospital and had long-term kidney issues. She was also sterilized. She went in for a kidney procedure, but they without her permission sterilized her, so she could not have children. And that was a common practice, right? They didn't want us to reproduce unless they had control of that. And then sometimes they sold our babies, right after out from under us. But even through all of that, she still stood on something, right? She still gave it everything she had till she died. And I'm so grateful for her sacrifice and for her model of what it really means to advocate for her community. She's also one of the people that said, "I'm just tired of being sick and tired," and that's really where I am right now. So I'm silent until I can't be silent anymore. And the silence is not I'm just sitting back waiting for somebody else to do it. It's sometimes you have to listen more than you talk, to understand what's really going on so you can move, right, on behalf of the people. And y'all can work together to come up with a plan. And that's not necessarily to come against someone, but how do you figure out how to make this system work for you? Okay, because everybody else did. So now we got to figure it out together too. And in the meantime, support each other, take care of ourselves. That's part of the fight too, because if we're not well, we can't help somebody else. And sometimes we forget that part in the work. But thank y'all so much for your time, and I hope that answers your question. Sometimes I get too rambling when I get excited.
Absolutely. No, this is beautiful. I love the different ways that each of you are sharing, and I hope everyone's taking good notes about the sort of collaboration and aggregation and lifting others up. And already Sarah and LeTicia, you've shared how you're doing that beyond just your farm. But Rowan, I'd love to hear from you. And just a reminder to folks listening, we've got a little bit more time if you want to. There's lots of good engagement and comments, and we'll wrap it up. I've got a couple of kind of questions in there that I'll at least plan to weave into our final statements from our group here. But I would love to hear, Rowan, a little bit more about the barriers you've faced and some of the ways you've overcome them.
I think for me, the biggest barrier for finding more land was the cost part of it and availability, especially where I live in the Harrisburg area of Pennsylvania. It's very rural farmland around here, but the small farm that I have is right near Harrisburg, in a pretty rural township, but it's still surrounded by big neighborhoods and developers that are putting up $1 million homes. And this farm that we bought, the only reason I was able to purchase it is because it was in the preserved farm program, which meant that it could not be sold to a developer. So it was more affordable for us. And even then, finding someone to loan me the money, $920,000, was phenomenal. It took me a long time. I was turned away by many people until finally someone at M&T Bank actually helped me, directed me to Shippensburg University, have a program where they do small business development. So they help people write business plans and goals for their business. And that was the game changer for me, was being able to write proper business plans and come up with appropriate spreadsheets so that when I went to these banks, I could actually say, this is how it looks on paper. And now, of course, that original business plan lasted about 6 months. And then I changed everything up because I got here and I realized, well, I want to do this and I want to do this, and which is just fine. And anyway, so, and the long story short is the business plan really isn't worth the paper it's written on after it's implemented. So, but anyhow, it was finding somebody that could look at what I wanted to do and be able to get, their underwriters to say, okay, this seems like an appropriate risk. That, and having the support from my husband to be able to put in money to be able to afford a commercial loan to buy this farm. So if I hadn't had, and I had gone also, like you, LeTicia, to FSA, they were impossible to work with. And their lag time from, if I were to go and make an offer on a farm, it might be 8 weeks before they even decided to look at my paperwork to see if I was even eligible. By which time the sellers are like, well, we've sold it to someone else because they came along with plans already in place. So, so that was not going to happen. Well, M&T Bank helped me work out with Small Business Association. So part of our loans for this farm is through the Small Business Association. And it was an epically long amount of paperwork, but they did eventually help us buy the farm. And it also helped that the family that I was buying the farm from wanted me to have the farm. So they could have sold it to someone else, but once they committed to me, Nancy, who was the POA for the family, stuck with me even through thick and thin. And I'm deeply grateful to her for also seeing the vision of this farm coming into new hands that wanted to do good things with it. So, yeah, that's been the biggest barrier for me. I have had a phenomenal amount of support from farmers around here. Some of them, the good old boys, I think they just were like, oh, we'll just look to see when she fails. And so, of course, me being me, I'm like, well, hell, I'm not going to fail then. So, but yeah, I've had some really good support from other farmers around here, and we've bartered for things. One of my farming friends grew some oats for his cows on one of the fields, and so we've been able to trade back and forth, and I really enjoy that, because to me that means that this farming community really does support what I'm trying to do, because it's very much against the grain. Everybody around here farms conventionally, and it's all beans and corn, and quite a few of them do no-till. But and I think there's more of a shift that way. So, and speaking of no-till, NRCS has been a huge supporter for me in helping me implement some of the things that I want to do on this farm that are pretty important when you have a livestock farm. Like they have part of the cost share for the fencing that we've put in. And also up and coming in the next year, we'll be putting in underground irrigation for waterers for the cattle and the pigs and stuff out in the fields, which is going to be pretty huge job, because right now I have big water totes that I tow around with the tractor and water everybody in the morning. So they've been really an important part of getting some of the things done, not just on this new farm, but on our old farm or other farm where we had put up one of the high tunnels and underground irrigation with funding from NRCS. So that's really one of the things that has helped me the most is getting grants. So, but I have no idea how to look for these grants. So I've been grateful to people around me like NRCS that have been pointing me in the right direction. So, because that's the biggest thing for me is it's cash flow. I think that's probably most farmers, it's cash flow. I've got all this land, but I have to have the money to buy a manure spreader, and I have to have the money to buy a big enough brush hog that I'm not going to spend 3 days in one field if I have to mow, So that's, to me, been one of the biggest barriers, even though I've had a lot of help from my family. If there was a way for me to get grant money to help me acquire some of those things, that would be a game changer, because I'm buying little things piecemeal. I don't want to go into more debt than I already have for the farm right now. So So yeah, so that's really, I don't have a lot of the barriers that you, Sarah and LeTicia, have, and I admire you so much for what you've, your barriers that are beyond what I've had to deal with. So I'm deeply grateful that I have family support that has been able to help me out financially to be able to move forward. So anyway, that's my story here.
Thank you, Rowan, and thank you all. This has been such a good conversation, and I'm noting the time. It's gone much quicker than I thought it would, and it always does. And I could absolutely speak with you all for the rest of the afternoon, but I'm going to honor everyone's time. As you are all busy farmers and you have things to do out in the field, spring is upon us. So I'd love to kind of just do a wrap around. There have been some different comments that have come in around interested to know who your partners are and your collaborators are, and advice you have for future farmers, especially folks who are trying to get into this work. So I think maybe that's the last question I'll kind of ask you all to ponder. What advice do you have for folks who are getting into, I'll say, the agrarian game, particularly if they are from historically underserved communities? What are a couple seeds of advice you have in getting them started? We'll go around the same order we've done. So Sarah, LeTicia, and then Rowan. Sarah, unmute.
Yeah, thanks, Gabrielle. So a couple things comes to mind when you're looking to get into this space. One, asset map. I just hosted facilitated a group with some new agrarian leaders yesterday, looking at what your current assets are. When I think about assets, I'm not thinking about if you don't have land. Think about this in, how do your assets are recycled materials, right? So cardboard boxes, paper bags, water jugs, water bottles. If you want to get into this space to test your water, if you want to get into herbs, where you want to use your herbs for a byproduct, or if you want to start small and go big, build out your little small raised bed, see how that goes, test the water. But one, create a network. Get out here and start mixing and mingling, doing site visits, go out here and pick people's brains, lean into the resources that are available, your current extension programs, community garden programs, master gardener programs, master naturalist programs, just really understanding the resources that are currently available, but also go in there with an open mind, look at some books, go to the library. George Washington Carver has great books out there to understand what his journey was. So just really getting out here, building a network, asset map, understanding what your current resources are, whether it be air, water, land, the minerals, whatever. And then start small to go big. You've got to scale this. And when people say scale, it doesn't necessarily means in large quantity. It means how do you diversify it? So you heard us talk about multiple streams of income. So if you currently have land in your family and they're not doing anything with it, then think about, how do I convert this with the current assets that are there? So if you have a father who was a cattle farmer and all he did was raise cattle to sell at the stockyard, then how do you turn that cold cow into a value-added product to sell hamburgers? So really thinking about how to diversify with your current items that you already have, and then how do you grow and scale that to something that you can sustain. The other plan is having a plan on paper. Phase it. Phase 1 is this. Phase 2, build out that phase and succession plan so that you have a visual to go by. It is not cheap. This is not a cheap hobby, right? I mean, it's just like golf. It's very expensive. But at the same token, building that network then mitigates having to go out here and buy large pieces of equipment, cattle stock trailers, tractors, bush hogs. Get in there, build that network if you're in a close proximity, and start, do equipment shares. And much like we do CSAs for food, do some sort of CSA for equipment, how you build out those opportunities so you can share. This is very expensive. Even if you have a friend that owns land, say, can I lease 2 acres just so I can try out something to see if you want to do it before you make that huge commitment. I mean, this is not something that is cheap. You have to think about it in a lens of am I going to get in this and I'm not going to stay in this? This is not something that you can buy cows a day and then 6 months later be like, I don't want to do this. I mean, you still got to figure out where they're going to go. Same thing with chickens. So start small. If you're into the textiles industry, you know, how do I get into start growing my own cotton so that I can then do that? Or if you're into fiber, such as hair sheep and hair goats and all things, rabbits, think about what you want to do and figure out what you're capable of. But you know, this is an industry where you become a lifelong learner. You're always learning new ways. You're always learning new things. Don't be afraid. There is never a stupid question. So do not let people minimize you because you don't know. There's lots of programs out there. Lean into, you know, Penn State's got good stuff, Kentucky State, Iowa State, all of these universities, Nebraska, all of these big ag institutions, they have great resources that's right there, free to you. Use your $1,000 computer that you have, that cell phone is what I'm talking about, to do your research. And then build that cohort that you can depend on. And again, lean into your workforce offices so that they can connect you to the right people, the SBAs, the small business administrations. Going out to field days, I would say take advantage of your HBCU, your land grant institutions, PWIs, to go to their field days, go to the research days. Many of the companies will have research trials. You don't necessarily have to use their product, but just go and hear, because that's where you will build a network of individuals that's in this space and pick their brains. So just really capitalize on the human agency out here, but put it on a piece of paper. Do a mind map, do an asset map, whatever is comfortable for you, but get out here and put it on the paper, but then start looking at where can I go to find the resources. We're always available to help you, have conversations, be a thought partner. But, you know, deal with people who really want to help lift you up and move you to the next level, as opposed to try to discourage you and move you in a different direction. So that's what I would say. You know, be a volunteer for 4-H programs so you can see what 4-H does, or an FFA program, or whatever. But just get out here, go into the park system, and, you know, ask them, can you be a part of the garden program or whatever? There's all kinds of garden opportunities out here. But I would strongly encourage you to get into the Master Gardener program or something like that. Be on a livestock board, go to the state fair, whatever. But just mix and mingle so that you can understand what it takes to be into the game. I mean, we didn't just get in this overnight. I mean, and we're still constantly to figure out what's the right niche for us so that we can pass it on to the next generation, right? I mean, there's no quick fix. There's no quick answers. And you've got to be dedicated. And this is a 24/7 job, 365 days. So if you're a person who loves to be social, you want to go out, you want to hang out, you want to travel, this is an industry you really got to think about, because you're tied to it. You're committed to it. And so you've got animals you got to care for. So you really have to think about, is this the life that I really want to pursue? And homesteading is becoming very popular today. So getting into homestead groups and listening and just really participating intentionally with that open ear to listen, not just to hear, and invest your time wisely, because it does take a 110% commitment to get into this space and be successful with it. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Sarah.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
I'll try
LeTicia.
not to repeat everything Sarah said, but yes, Miss Sarah. I agree. But I started with a 4x4 raised bed, a bucket, and a bowl. it's been 9 years ago. 9 years ago as an adult. I grew up on a farm, but I went to school, got my education, got a master's, was in school 7 years straight, right, to finish undergrad and grad school, because I knew I wasn't going back. Okay, if I had a break, I wasn't going back. So I just went and got it done. But as an adult, I that's what I started with: a 4x4 raised bed, a bucket, and a bowl, and grew some food in it, and started taking pictures of the stuff. I don't take very many pictures of myself, but I take pictures of things that I do and people that I interact with. Posted it on social media, and before I knew it, I had a garden coaching business. I led with that. That's what it started. Bearfruit and Grow started as. And although I still provide that service, that's not what we're leading with now. We've evolved since then. But I think you have to give yourself permission to be able to evolve as a business and as a person. If you don't know who you are, this line of work, this experience is a spiritual one, and so you are more than likely going to figure out who you are or who you're not as you're doing this. But be open to that journey. And share with other people, because sometimes our stories and our experiences heal others. And so just be open to that journey. Start small, like Miss Sarah said. Leverage what you have and who you know already. You do not have to have a lot of money to get started as a hobby farm. And I say hobby farm because you're just trying to figure it out. If you're like, listen, I'm not playing, because that's how it was. I was like, I'm not playing. This is going to take me 2 years to get myself together. And then 5 years, by 5 years, I'm going to be able to pay myself. Right. And so that's just kind of what I decided I was going to do. And that's what I'm working toward. But while you're doing this, big is different for everybody. What your farm looks like may be different from the next person's farm. What your goals are different from the other person's goal. What you feel like success is for you is going to be different for somebody else. Don't get caught up in comparing yourself to other people, other farms, other businesses, your counterparts, people that you really love and care about that are really successful in the business. Just don't get in the habit of comparing your businesses and your goals and your dreams with other people. Okay, you have to do some reflection and some soul searching to be able to stay on the path that you want for you and your family. So just make sure that you do that. Be nice to people. Because sometimes things do get a little frustrating and hard, but try your best to be nice first. And then one of my favorite quotes is from John Lewis, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says, sometimes you have to start some good trouble. Okay, so be open to that, because it might be something that you just walk into and didn't expect that you would be in that world of starting good trouble. But I've met that world, and I'm glad that I'm in that world. But just be open to the journey. Make it make sense for your business. And there's no shade on certified organic farms. I need y'all to hear me when I say this. But being certified organic and having all the labels and everything that all the things, you don't have to do that. If it doesn't make sense for your business, it doesn't make sense for your business. I personally will never be a certified organic farmer. That's a decision that I've made for my business, and I would love to share that story, but not now. It costs a lot of money, and there over time, a lot. It costs a lot to even become certified organic. It's a long process. I'm not saying all that to discourage you. If it doesn't make sense for your business, don't do it right now. You don't have to do it right now. You can do it later, or you can never do it. Okay. You don't have to focus on those things. Just be open to that. Okay. But that's pretty much it. I mean, I was prepared for that question. But Miss Rowan, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts as well. Thank y'all.
Thank you. I think for me, it was just getting up and doing it. When I had the small farm and I was evolving there and I outgrew it, I thought to myself, well, I'm either going to do or die. I need to do this. And I don't want to be 80 and say, why didn't I do that? And so I just set that goal, and it's set that intention. When you set that intention, it'll flow eventually. So I think that would be my biggest piece of advice, is don't sit back and wait for it to come to you. You have to find it. You have to go for it and push to find and get what you need. But the other thing is, don't be afraid to ask for help on any level, whether it's just simply, I can't get all the CSA boxes delivered today because I have to do such and such. Can somebody please help me with that? Or I'm at market and I forgot to collect the eggs that morning, or something like that. I mean, it can be small like that. Or my wonderful son, who's a diesel technician, and I'm asking him, can you please do the maintenance on one of the tractors for me? And of course, he always says, sure, no problem. But I have a problem with thinking that, well, I have to do it all myself. No, you don't have to do it all yourself. Make sure that you have, just like Sarah said, that you have a community around you that will help you out. If I ever have a question about raising cattle or raising sheep or whatever it is, I know that there's somebody in my network that I can go to and they will have answers for me. And when I did the Women for the Land series last year, that was, to me, one of the best parts about doing that, was finding that community of women right here where I am, and we are all doing the same thing and loving what we do. And now we have an additional level of support for each other. So seek that stuff out. And if you have a chance to do one of the Women for the Land series, absolutely do it. You don't even have to have your own land right then and there to do that. And just like you, LeTicia and Sarah said, start with a small raised bed. You're farming, you're growing things. So it's just as important as running cattle on 100 acres. So every little bit. So thank you guys. This has been wonderful.
Well, thank you all. This has been a fantastic conversation. We've had such good engagement and so many people joining us. So thank you all for your time. I know we didn't get to everyone's comments and questions. We'll do our best to do that on the various social media platforms. And I think you all have sort of material to get in touch with these wonderful people, but you always can reach out to us at American Farmland Trust, and we will help connect resources and connect you to people. And this group has shared so many wonderful opportunities and resources to get started. Good luck, everyone. And again, thank you for the time to my guests here who have been fantastic. I've learned a lot, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and a good season.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Bye.